Everyone, welcome to another Q&A session. Today we're going to try to answer some of the questions you guys asked. So let's go ahead and start with the first question. So the first question I have here says how to apply linear gradient color to circle or radial progress bar. Okay, we covered circle progress bar in one of our previous tutorials. So the question is how to give it a gradient color. Okay, so this is relatively an easy task. So all you have to do is select the progress bar, whether this one or this one, and then once it's selected, you can select from here or you can select from here, either way. Here, once you clicked the arc, that's your circle progress bar, and you see it's highlighted, it's kind of outlined here with the blue box. And then you can go to properties, and here you can select the radial, the gradient brush, and then pick the color from here. It's that simple. Okay, so if you want to change the color here, you can do so. Alright, but yeah, so that's that. Okay, let's move on to our next question. The next question is how to convert CSV file to a TSV file. So I haven't worked with TSV files myself, but from what I understand, they are tab separated values. Instead of comma separated, they are tab separated. So that's a relatively easy task to do with C#. Let me open one of our previous projects where we worked on the CSV file. So this was a simple CSV file. Let me actually open the file too. The file is this file here. It's context, has a name and phone number. So the values are comma separated. CSV file is a comma separated values versus TSV file is tab separated. So we're going to create a new method to convert the CSV file to a TSV file. Okay, basically both are text files, just with different extensions. So as you, I guess, import to different databases or Excel, it treats differently. Well, regardless, let's go ahead and create a new method here. So I'm going to call this static void convert CSV to a TSV file. Okay, let's parens and brackets braces to create our method. So I'm gonna copy first this line here that reads all the lines from the CSV file, so I need that same line of code. Okay, once we have that, I'm going to create a string variable. Let's say string str equals empty string. Okay, so I'm going to say for each var s in lines, so each string in lines, which is this is a string array. So we're going to loop through it, and then I'm going to say let's see, first I'm going to split them. So var, or you can say string. So var split, let's call it split, or split string, just call split to keep it short. So var split equals s dot split, and the character, first we're going to split by comma, that's how we are reading the file. So the current file has comma, the CSV file has commas in, so we're going to split and split each line into two separate strings. This variable is a string array as well, because the result as we are reading through it, it's going to be the first value, Mike, the name, and the phone number is going to be the second value of our string array. Okay, so once we separate that, then I'm going to create another string. Let's call this new string, new str equals, and I'm going to create a string interpolation. In here I'm going to say let's open curly braces. So first I'm going to grab the first part of this split string array. So the first value is split 0. So that's the first part, I'm grabbing that, and then at the end of this curly brace I'm going to add a tab character, and then open curly braces again, open close. I'm going to get the second part of this split, so split 1, which is the second value, and then at the end I'm going to add a new line character, which is \n, oops, wrong place, after this curly braces. Okay, so this is our tab character, \t, and \n is our new line character. Oops, I got the semicolons in the wrong place as well, so let's correct that. So once we do that, I'm going to add this result to the string variable here. So string, oops, okay, so str plus equals new str. Okay, and once that's done, we are going to save it. So let's say file dot append all text, I think. Let me see, what do we use up here? Append all text is fine, I think. All lines, I think either should work, but let's do all text. Append all text. So this method opens a file, appends specified string to the file, and then closes. If the file does not exist, the method creates a file. Okay, that's fine. All right. So we're going to pass in the path. The path is going to be the file name, which is contacts.csv, no, TSV file, and then the content will be the new string, the string up here, the variable. Okay, pass that in. So if you did it right, it's going to read the CSV file and then split them with split by the comma, and then create a new string and add it to the string variable here, and then save it to the file. Okay, let's call this method from the main and see what happens. Okay, let's say convert CSV to TSV file, and semicolon. Let's run this, see what happens. Okay, let's hit enter. Let's go to our folder, and sure enough, we have a TSV file here. Looks like we have tabs here. This one doesn't look right. Let's open the file. Sometimes it doesn't look perfect. So instead of comma, now we have tab in between two values. Okay. All right. So that's CSV to TSV file conversion using C#. Okay. Let's go to the next question. The next question is something similar. This one says, I have my data in SQL Server, and I want to export into XML file. When I click on Insert button in my C# program. This is the same logic. I haven't covered SQL, SQL, whichever you prefer. I haven't covered it yet, so I'm not gonna get into, because then I have to get into which way you're reading the SQL, which is, it can be entity framework, it can be a regular SQL queries. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to convert a CSV file to XML file, and then you can draw your own conclusion and use the same logic to create the XML file. Okay, so we're going to use the same file that we just seen here, the CSV file. I'm going to comment this out. And let's create a new method down below here. Let's call this convert static void convert CSV file to XML file. Okay. I'm going to use link for this part, but feel free to use system.xml if you feel like it. I have covered both extensively in past tutorials, so again, if you feel like you're new to XML or you need to learn a couple new things, please go check them out. I have a bunch of quite a few tutorials on the subject. So okay, I'm gonna grab this line again. This is what we use to read the CSV file. The XML file is going to look like something like this. So we'll have a context outer tag, and then a child contact tag, and within the contact tag we'll have the name tags with the information, phone tag with the phone information. That's the idea. Okay. Alright, so once we grab the XML, the CSV data, I'm going to create a X document variable. So let's call this xdoc and create new document. Okay. And then I'm going to first create the outer parent tag, the root tag. So xdoc.add, and that's, I'm going to call that contacts. Close this. Once we have that, I'm gonna for each through our lines here. So for, let's say, line in lines. Okay, first I'm going to split again. So var split line dot split to split by comma. Okay, once we get that, now we can say xdoc dot root. So our root is going to be this tag here. So root dot add. All right. Inside here, first we want to create the child contact tag, right? So new X element. All right, and we'll call this contacts singular. Okay, and it doesn't end here, so this is going to have two child tags as well. So new X element, and the first one is going to be name, but with this we are going to pass the contact as well, which is coming from here, the split 0. That's going to get the name value for this name tag, and then we want to create another tag, new X element, and this is going to be the phone tag. So phone and comma will pass in the second value, which is split 1, which is actually the second value. I think that should be it. So one line of code, kind of nested, but you can separate them if you want to. So that's that, and then we're going to say xdoc.save, and we'll pass in an file name, contacts.xml. Let me go check the folder, make sure we don't have an XML file here. Oh, this is the one I just actually played with, so I'm going to delete that. Okay, that's gone. So I'm going to run this. Okay, we got an exception. Cannot be added to contact. Non-white space characters cannot be added to content. Alright, where are we getting that white character from? Oh, new X element. Jesus. Okay. Let's try again. Went through fine. Let's open the file, and there it is. Beautiful. Right, so we have our context tag, and then child contact tags with name tags, phone tags, and information. Alright, so that's that. So we've seen how to convert a CSV file to a TSV file and to an XML file. Again, logic with the SQL or SQL is the same. You use either system.SQL, I think, to read the SQL file, or use entity framework, so whichever is you're working with. Then once you have that information, or most likely they're gonna be in objects anyway, so same thing. If you have objects, it's easier to work with the objects. So instead of taking apart the array, you just pass in the, let's say, person.name, person.phone number, all that good stuff. Okay, so that's that. Okay, let's move on to our next question. So the next question says, let's say the first ellipse, this is related to the triggers tutorial we had. That's the question referencing to that tutorial. So it says, let's say the first ellipse bottom will be painted green when the mouse is over it. What will happen if the red checkbox is checked and then the mouse is over the area? will it go to green first, and then when the mouse is away, the color will be back to blank or red. Okay, I'm gonna bring that tutorial, project up, and let's run this and see what's going on. Alright, so basically when we check this, the trigger turns the color here red, and when we hover over it, nothing happens. Let's try this one. Checked, trigger kicked in, mouse over, it worked. So the reason why is the order of the triggers matters. So this guy, the first trigger is the property trigger, and the second one is data trigger, which is the checkbox one. So once we hit that, we can't go back to this one. So we gotta hit this first in order to the second one to kick in. And if we look at the second one, the first trigger is data trigger, and the second one is the property trigger. So that's why the second one worked on the yellow ellipse. Okay, so the order doesn't matter. I had a similar question where I think one of you guys had was getting null exception error with the data grid, and that was something similar because when you typed into the text box to search the data, it was given an exception because the order that it was loaded to the visual tree wasn't correct. So the order does matter. Let's see. Okay, the other question is related to this. It says and and or combination trigger conditions. I believe this is something to do with the multi-triggers. So I realized I didn't cover that, so I'm gonna do a quick, I guess, let's say tutorial to cover the multi-triggers. So let's do an example actually. Alright, so I'm going to create a rectangle, well, not here, so we can do it here now. And let's see, to here. Let's add a, what is the stack panel? Okay, so we have the stack panel here. So let's, you know what, I'm going to use the same example as before. So this one we already had ellipses here, checkbox, so save some time. So let's create a rectangle and let's place this right in the second row, first column. So grid.row will be 1. Let's close this out and let's bring in rectangle.style and bring in the style tag, and target type will be type rectangle. Let's close this out, and inside our style we need style.triggers tag. Okay, and now we can bring in MultiDataTriggers. Okay, let's use that. Okay, so with MultiDataTriggers or multi-triggers, we can use multiple conditions. So you can say condition, actually MultiDataTriggers.conditions first, and then conditions. So first condition, let's say bind to checkbox 1. Let's say binding element name checkbox 1, and the path is going to be is checked. and if the value is true, excuse me. So that's our first condition. Okay. And when that happens, we want, let's give it a setter. Actually, you know what? Let me, inside our style, let's first set the background color of the rectangle, actually the fill color. So let's first give it a setter. Let's say fill, property fill, and the value is something, let's pick this one. Okay, so when this condition is true or it's met, doesn't have to be true, but it has to be met, then we'll need another setter here, right, I think below here. Setter, property, and fill. We want the color to be blue. Okay, so right now it's not checked. Let's go ahead and check the box, see what happens. Okay, so we checked the red box, the red checkbox, and the color, the trigger kicked in and turned the fill to blue. Okay, let's add another condition. This one, let's say checkbox 2. If it's checked true, then we want to change the color. So in this case, we have two conditions, they both have to be met. Okay, let's run this. Okay, so check, check. When both conditions are met, the color, the trigger will kick in. Alright, but the values doesn't have to be true always. One of them can be false. Okay, so in this case, when the first one is checked and the second one is unchecked. Okay, let's try again. So check, check, it didn't work. If I uncheck this one, it'll work. So basically these two conditions are met and the trigger will kick in. So all conditions listed here between these tags have to be met. Okay, let's do one more condition, and this time let's use a property in the code behind. Let's create a quick class here, public class. Let's say int, and this will have only one property, and this is going to be int. Let's call this my int, and let's set this to 5. Okay, so we have a class and we called it int with one property, and that's set to value of 5. So I'm gonna bring in that class as data context here real quick. So rectangle.data context, and say local int. Okay, it doesn't exist. Let's rebuild this. Okay, the warning went away. So now I can add another property here, another condition. I can say condition binding, let's say binding my int, and the value is 5. If the value is 5, again, when these three conditions are met, the setter will apply to the rectangle. All right, so let's see. So we have, right now we have two conditions already met. So this is unchecked and the value is 5. So if I check this, it should apply, the setter should apply, and it did. Okay, but let's see. If I change this to true and change this to 1, and this will never work because that's a fixed value, number 5. So these two conditions are met, but number 3 is not met. The value is 1, but we are looking for 5. I mean, value is 5 in the code behind, but here we are looking for 1, which is not true. It's not met, and it's not gonna work. But again, if we change this to 5, it should work now. So we have already one condition met. These two conditions, when they are met, the trigger will kick in and apply the setter. Okay, we can also, if you want, we can put this one in play too, the text box. Let's say condition binding element name. I think that's TBX. Let me double check the name. And I lost it. Path text. Value red, or yeah, red is fine. Let's see if I get the right, I got the name right, so that should be all right. So now we have 4 conditions. So these 2 have to be met, should be checked, and this one should say red, and we have the int already met here, so we have to meet all other 3 conditions for the trigger to kick in. All right, so 1, 2, and if I type in red in here, then the trigger will apply the setter. Okay, so that's that. You can change this any way you want it, and add more conditions if you need to. Okay, so that's multi-data triggers, but you can also do the same thing with multi-triggers, which is property triggers. So that's that. Okay. All right, as for our last questions for this part, I have a question that says why the classes are in main window XAML.cs. In other words, in our code behind file, most of my tutorials you'll see classes. I type in code behind file. It's not in the same class, but in the same namespace right below this partial class here. The reason I do that because it's easy for you guys to see the classes and relate to the UI part. I mean, again, I think I mentioned before, you can just easily create separate classes like this one here. We can go to here, say create a separate class and move it to a different file. It will still work, no difference. It's just that when it's here, when you move back and forth, you don't have to go 10 different places. But of course, when you build your own application, you want to put in a separate file to keep things more organized. Okay, yeah, like I said, you can just say, I think there should be an option here. Let's see, generate move type to int.cs, that's the one. So if you do that, that should put that in the project folder. Let's see, right here. Now you have to open this as a separate tab again. I think I find it easier for people to understand when it's in the same file, you know, right in front of you. So okay, I think that's it for now. Until the next one, take it easy.